Millionaire marries a homeless girl on a dare, discovers she's a virgin on their wedding night, and falls deeply in love. The crystal chandelier glittered above the grand hall of the Seraph Club, casting golden light over the polished marble floors and the crowd of New York's most elite socialites. Champagne glasses clinked, laughter echoed, and the room buzzed with conversations about stocks, yachts, and exotic vacations. Damian Blake lounged effortlessly on a velvet armchair, a glass of aged whiskey in hand, his sharp gray eyes scanning the room with an air of boredom. At 28, he had everything a man could want: fortune, fame, and women who threw themselves at his feet. Yet none of it thrilled him anymore. Life felt like one long, monotonous game where he already knew the outcome. His closest friends, equally rich and equally reckless, gathered around, their voices growing louder as the night deepened. So Damian, one of them, Ethan, smirked, swirling his drink. "When are you finally going to settle down? Or are you too scared to get tied down like the rest of us poor souls?" Damian chuckled, leaning back with a confident grin. "Settle down, please. Marriage is just another transaction. With enough money, you can get anyone to say I do. Love's just an illusion for the broke." The group erupted in laughter, but Leo, the wildest among them, leaned forward, his eyes glinting mischievously. "Oh yeah," Leo challenged, his tone dripping with mockery. "If you're so sure money can buy anything, how about this? You marry the next homeless girl you see on the street." The table went silent for a moment, the absurdity of the dare hanging in the air. But Damian didn't flinch. Instead, his grin widened, that familiar spark of arrogance flickering in his eyes. "Marry a homeless girl?" he repeated, as if the idea were merely another item on his to-do list. "Piece of cake. I'll do it tomorrow." The group burst into laughter again, thinking Damian was joking. But as he downed the last of his whiskey and stood, there was a seriousness in his gaze that silenced them. "Watch me," he said simply, tossing a few $100 bills on the table before striding out of the club, his mind already set on winning this ridiculous bet. The next morning, the cold air bit at Damian's skin as he strolled through the less glamorous streets of Manhattan. The city felt different here, gritty, raw, and far removed from the luxury he was accustomed to. But he wasn't fazed. This was just another challenge, another game to win. As he passed under a rusted bridge near the East River, his eyes caught sight of a figure huddled against the concrete wall. She was wrapped in a threadbare coat, her knees drawn to her chest, and her face hidden beneath a tangle of messy, dark hair. But what struck Damian wasn't her disheveled appearance, it was the fire in her eyes as she noticed him approaching. "Sophia." Her gaze was sharp, defiant, and far from the desperate looks he'd expected. There was a stubborn pride in the way she held herself, even in rags. "Hey," Damian called out smoothly, stopping a few feet away. "I have a proposition for you." Sophia's eyes narrowed, her body tensing. "Not interested," she snapped, her voice hoarse but strong. Damian raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her immediate rejection. Most people would have at least listened when a man in a tailored suit approached with money to offer. "You haven't even heard it yet," he said, smirking. Sophia scoffed, standing to her full height, which barely reached Damian's shoulder. "I don't need to. Guys like you? You think you can throw a few bucks at someone like me and expect them to dance to your tune? Well, I'm not for sale." Her words, sharp as knives, should have annoyed him. But instead, Damian felt something he hadn't in a long time: curiosity. She wasn't like the people he was used to dealing with. "Not for sale, huh?" Damian chuckled, slipping his hands into his coat pockets. "What if I told you I want to marry you?" Sophia blinked, the confidence in her stance faltering for the first time. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," Damian said, his tone casual like he was discussing the weather. "I want to marry you. 1 year, that's all. You'll live in a penthouse, have more money than you've ever dreamed of, and when the year's up, we'll part ways. No strings attached." Sophia stared at him like he'd lost his mind. "Why the hell would you want to marry a homeless girl?" she asked, suspicion dripping from every word. Damian shrugged. "Let's just say it's a social experiment." Sophia laughed bitterly, shaking her head. "Yeah, more like some twisted joke." He didn't deny it, but he pulled out a sleek black card from his wallet and held it up. $500,000, he said, his voice dropping to a serious tone. "That's what you'll walk away with at the end of the year. Think about it, you could turn your life around. Get a place, find your sister, start over." Sophia's breath caught at the mention of her sister. How could he know about that? But the temptation was undeniable. $500,000 could change everything. Still, she glared at him, her pride warring with desperation. "And what's in it for you?" Damien smirked. "Let's just say I like a challenge." Sophia stared at him for a long moment, weighing her options. Finally, she exhaled sharply and crossed her arms. 1 year. "And you don't get to own me," she said firmly. Damien extended his hand, his grin widening. "Deal." Sophia hesitated, then shook it, sealing their fate. As they walked back to Damien's sleek black car, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just stepped into something far more complicated than she realized. And Damien, despite his arrogance, couldn't ignore the nagging thought in the back of his mind that this game might not go as planned. But neither of them knew just how much this reckless deal would change their lives forever. The grand hall of the Blake estate was bathed in golden light, shimmering off the crystal chandeliers and cascading down the towering marble columns. Guests dressed in designer suits and glittering gowns sipped champagne and whispered behind manicured hands. The media swarmed the entrance, their cameras flashing like strobe lights, eager to capture the wedding of Damien Blake, the city's most eligible millionaire bachelor. But amidst the glamour and opulence stood Sophia, her simple white dress clashing with the extravagance around her. She felt like an outsider in a world she had no place in, her heart pounding not from excitement but from discomfort. The diamond ring on her finger felt heavier than it should have, an emblem of a deal, not love. Damien, standing tall in his custom-tailored tuxedo, wore a cocky grin, as if this were just another business transaction. And to him it was. His friends watched from the sidelines, their smug expressions reminding him of the bet that started it all. Marry a homeless girl? Easy. The ceremony was swift, the vows rehearsed and hollow. Sophia's voice didn't tremble because of nerves, it trembled from the sheer absurdity of it all. When Damien leaned in to kiss her, their lips barely brushed, and the crowd erupted in applause, oblivious to the tension beneath the surface. The first few days of married life felt like navigating a minefield. The sprawling mansion, with its cold marble floors and high ceilings, felt more like a prison to Sophia than a home. She was surrounded by luxury, silk sheets, designer clothes, gourmet meals, but none of it could mask the emptiness. Damien treated her with casual indifference, as if she were another accessory to his lavish lifestyle. He introduced her at parties as his lovely wife with a smirk that made Sophia's skin crawl. But she refused to be a passive participant in his game. One evening, after yet another pretentious gala, Sophia finally snapped. "You think this is all a joke, don't you?" She confronted Damien in the grand hallway, her voice echoing off the marble walls. Damien raised an eyebrow, loosening his tie. "It's just business, sweetheart. You agreed to this." Sophia's eyes burned with anger. "I didn't agree to be paraded around like some trophy. You don't know the first thing about respect." Damien's smirk faltered for a split second, but he quickly recovered, shrugging her off. "Relax. It's only for a year." But that night, as Damien lay in his king-sized bed, he found himself staring at the ceiling, her words replaying in his head. For the first time, he wondered why her opinion mattered. As days turned into weeks, Damien began to notice things he hadn't before. Sophia refused to be waited on by the staff, insisting on making her own breakfast in the massive, gleaming kitchen. She treated the housekeepers with kindness, learning their names and asking about their families. One afternoon, Damien watched from the balcony as Sophia knelt in the garden, helping the groundskeeper replant flowers that had wilted in the summer heat. Her hair was messy, her hands covered in dirt, but her face glowed with a quiet contentment. It was a stark contrast to the polished, superficial women he usually surrounded himself with. She didn't belong in his world, and yet there was something about her that felt more real than anything he'd ever known. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late when Damien returned home from a business trip, the house unusually quiet. As he walked through the dimly lit hallway, he heard a faint cough coming from the guest room, Sophia's room. He pushed the door open and found her curled up in bed, her face pale, beads of sweat glistening on her forehead. Without thinking, Damien rushed to her side. "Sophia." His voice, usually steady and confident, was laced with concern. Her eyes fluttered open, glassy and unfocused. "I'm fine," she croaked, trying to sit up. But Damien gently pressed her back down. "Stop being stubborn," he murmured, fetching a damp cloth and placing it on her forehead. He stayed by her side through the night, checking her temperature, making sure she drank water, and holding her hand when the fever made her shiver. In the quiet hours of dawn, when Sophia finally drifted into a restless sleep, Damien found himself staring at her, a strange tightness in his chest. This wasn't part of the plan. He wasn't supposed to care. When Sophia woke, she found Damien still there, his head resting against the side of her bed. She was too weak to argue, too touched by his unexpected tenderness to push him away. As the days passed and her strength returned, so did their late-night conversations. One evening, wrapped in a blanket on the balcony, Sophia finally opened up about her past. "I wasn't always on the streets," she whispered, staring at the city lights below. "My parents died when I was 16. My little sister and I bounced around foster homes, but we got separated. I tried to find her, but I didn't have the money or resources. So I ended up here." Damien listened, his heart twisting at the pain in her voice. He realized that beneath her tough exterior was a woman who had endured more than he could fathom. She wasn't just some homeless girl he married on a dare. She was strong, resilient, and honest in a way no one in his life had ever been. One night, as they sat in the living room watching an old movie, their hands brushed against each other on the couch. Neither of them pulled away. The tension between them was no longer laced with animosity. It was something deeper, something unspoken. Damien found himself looking at Sophia differently. It wasn't just her beauty, though he'd be a fool to deny it. It was the way she laughed with her whole heart, the fire in her eyes when she spoke about things she cared about, and the quiet vulnerability she tried so hard to hide. And Sophia, she started to see glimpses of the man Damien could be, the one behind the arrogance and bravado. The one who stayed up all night to take care of her, who listened when she shared her pain, and who, despite himself, was starting to care. But both were too afraid to admit what was growing between them. For now. The salty breeze from the ocean drifted through the open balcony doors of the luxury beachfront villa, carrying the soft sounds of waves crashing against the shore. The villa was part of an exclusive resort Damien's family had booked for a weekend retreat, a lavish escape meant for relaxation, but for Damien and Sophia, it was anything but. For months they had lived under the same roof, legally bound by marriage but emotionally guarded. Their relationship had evolved from indifference to something more complicated, a mix of unspoken words, lingering glances, and the tension of emotions neither dared to fully confront. But tonight, all the carefully built walls between them would begin to crumble. Earlier that evening, Damien's family had hosted a formal dinner in the resort's grand dining hall, complete with champagne toasts and probing questions about their married life. To maintain appearances, Damien had slipped his arm around Sophia's waist, whispering sweet nothings in her ear as cameras flashed. But it wasn't just for show anymore. Every time she laughed at his sarcastic jokes or leaned into his touch, his heart betrayed him, beating faster than he cared to admit. After the dinner, they returned to their shared villa, the air between them thick with unspoken tension. Sophia stepped out onto the balcony, the moonlight casting a silver glow over her features. She looked beautiful, more than beautiful, wearing a simple, flowing dress that fluttered in the breeze, her hair cascading down her back like waves of midnight silk. Damien couldn't take his eyes off her. "You're quiet tonight," Sophia finally said, her voice soft as she gazed at the ocean. Damien joined her, his hands sliding into his pockets. "Just thinking." "About what?" she asked, turning to face him, her eyes searching his. He hesitated, unsure whether to brush it off with his usual charm or be honest. For once, honesty won. "About how this started," he admitted, his voice low. "And how different it feels now." Sophia's breath hitched, but she quickly masked it with a small, knowing smile. "Yeah, it is different." The silence between them grew heavier, charged with something neither of them could deny anymore. Finally, Damien reached out, gently tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His touch lingered, his fingers brushing against her cheek, and in that moment everything else faded away. "Sophia," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. She didn't respond with words. Instead, she leaned in, closing the distance between them, her lips meeting as in a kiss that was tentative at first but quickly deepened, fueled by months of suppressed feelings. Damien's heart pounded as he pulled her closer, his hands resting on her waist, feeling the warmth of her body against his. They moved inside, their kisses growing more urgent as they stumbled toward the bedroom, shedding the last of their inhibitions. But when Damien's fingers brushed against the delicate skin of her back, he felt her stiffen beneath him. He pulled back, his breath ragged, and looked into her eyes. What he saw there wasn't fear, it was vulnerability. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, his hand cupping her face. Sophia swallowed hard, her eyes glistening. "Damien, I need to tell you something." His heart skipped a beat. What is it? I've never, she hesitated, her voice barely a whisper. I've never been with anyone before. Damien froze, the weight of her words sinking in. He stared at her, stunned, as the reality of what she'd just confessed hit him like a freight train. She's a virgin. For a moment, he couldn't process it. This woman, so fierce, so independent, had given him no reason to suspect she was anything but experienced. But now, standing here with her heart laid bare, he realized just how wrong he'd been about her. Sophia's cheeks flushed with embarrassment, and she tried to pull away, but Damien held her gently, his eyes softening. "Hey," he whispered, his voice tender. "It's okay." She shook her head, her eyes brimming with tears. "No, it's not. You probably think I'm pathetic. I mean, who gets married like this and—" "Stop." Damien cut her off, his thumb brushing away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "I don't think that. Not at all." He took a deep breath, his own emotions swirling inside him. I don't understand. Why did you agree to marry me if—" Sophia looked down, her voice trembling. "Because I needed the money. But I didn't think any of this would happen. I didn't expect to feel—" She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Damien's heart clenched. He realized now that this wasn't just a game anymore, not for him and not for her. The lines between their deal and their real feelings had blurred, and he couldn't pretend otherwise. He leaned in, pressing his forehead against hers, his voice barely audible. "Sophia, I don't want this to be just some arrangement anymore. I don't care about the bet or the money. I care about you." Sophia's breath hitched, her eyes searching his for any sign of deceit, but all she saw was sincerity. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm scared, Damien." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly, as if she might slip away. "I'm scared too," he admitted, his own voice thick with emotion. "But I don't want to lose you." They stayed like that for what felt like an eternity, wrapped in each other's arms, letting the walls between them finally fall. The next morning, everything felt different. Damien woke up to the soft light of dawn filtering through the curtains, his arms still wrapped around Sophia as she slept peacefully beside him. He watched her for a long time, his heart swelling with something he couldn't quite name. It wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just affection. It was something deeper, something real. From that moment on, Damien knew he couldn't go back to the man he was before. This marriage wasn't just a bet anymore. It was the beginning of something he never expected to find, love. And he was determined to show Sophia that she wasn't just a part of a foolish dare. She was everything he never knew he needed. The morning sun cast its golden glow over the Blake estate, but the warmth of the light did little to thaw the chill that had settled into the heart of the mansion. Damien stirred awake, his arms instinctively reaching for Sophia, only to find her side of the bed cold and empty. For weeks now, waking up next to her had become his favorite part of the day, but today something felt off. The house was too quiet. Damien sat up, rubbing his eyes, when his phone buzzed violently on the nightstand. He grabbed it, expecting some mundane business email, but the moment he saw the flood of notifications, his heart dropped. Billionaire Damien Blake marries homeless girl on a bet. The truth behind Damien Blake's sham marriage exposed. Sophia, the pawn in Damien Blake's cruel game. The headlines screamed at him from every direction, emails, texts, social media. His pulse quickened as he clicked on one of the articles. There, in glaring black and white, was the full story of the bet he had made months ago. Every humiliating detail laid bare for the world to see. But the worst part? Sophia's name was all over it. It didn't take long for the fallout to reach Sophia. She had gone out early that morning for a walk, needing time to clear her head after the emotional roller coaster of the past few weeks. But as she passed by a newsstand, the magazines with her face plastered on them stopped her cold. Her heart sank. People were staring, whispering, pointing. Their eyes weren't curious, they were mocking. The woman who had trapped Damien Blake in a marriage. The girl who had been bought off the street like a piece of property. But what gutted her the most was the revelation of the bet. The truth that Damien had married her as part of a joke. Her vision blurred with tears as she turned on her heel, rushing back to the estate. When Sophia burst through the front doors of the mansion, Damien was already there, phone in hand, panic etched across his face. But the moment he saw her, his expression softened with relief. "Sophia," he began, taking a step forward. But she held up her hand, her eyes blazing with fury. "Don't," she hissed, her voice shaking with rage and heartbreak. "Don't you dare say anything." Damien froze, his chest tightening. Sophia, please let me explain. It's not what you think. Oh, really? She shot back, her voice rising. Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what I think. You married me on a bet, Damien. A bet. Her voice cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. Was any of it real? Or was I just some pathetic charity case you could parade around until you got bored? Damien's heart shattered at the sight of her breaking in front of him. He reached for her, desperation in his eyes. I swear to you, it started as a bet, but it's not anymore. Sophia, I love you. I didn't mean for it to happen this way, but you've changed me. You've changed everything. But Sophia shook her head, backing away from his touch like it burned her. Don't lie to me, Damien. You're just like everyone else. You saw me as nothing more than a project, something to fix or control. Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. I never wanted to fix you, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I wanted to love you. But it was too late. The trust was gone, shattered by the weight of his past mistakes. With one last tearful glance, Sophia whispered, "Goodbye, Damien." And then she was gone. The days that followed were a blur for Damien. The once lively mansion felt like a tomb, each empty room echoing with memories of Sophia's laughter, her stubbornness, her warmth. He tried to drown himself in work, attending meetings and fielding calls, but nothing could distract him from the void she had left behind. For the first time in his life, Damien understood what it meant to be truly alone. He stopped going to social events, ignoring his friends' attempts to cheer him up. The parties, the women, the wealth, it all felt meaningless without Sophia by his side. The woman who had challenged him, seen through his facade and made him want to be a better man. And now she was gone because of his arrogance, his foolishness. Meanwhile, Sophia tried to rebuild her life, but everything felt hollow. She found a small apartment with the money Damien had given her, started volunteering at a local shelter, and even began searching for her sister again. But no matter how much she tried to move forward, she couldn't shake the memories of Damien, the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, the tender moments they'd shared when their walls finally came down. Despite everything, she missed him. But the fear of being hurt again kept her from reaching out. She told herself it was better this way, safer to keep her heart guarded. But deep down, she knew the truth. She still loved him. Weeks passed, and the city moved on, but Damien and Sophia remained trapped in their own worlds of regret and longing. Neither of them knew how to bridge the chasm between them, afraid that the damage was too great, the wounds too deep. But love, no matter how bruised or battered, has a way of finding its way back. And their story wasn't over yet. The grand conference room of the Blake Corporation was filled with reporters, their cameras flashing and microphones poised, ready to devour the latest scandal. Damien Blake, the once untouchable millionaire, stood at the podium, his usually confident demeanor replaced by something raw, vulnerable. The world had watched him rise to power, but today they would watch him fall on his own terms. He cleared his throat, the hum of murmurs fading as all eyes locked on him. I know why you're all here, Damien began, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. You've read the headlines, you've seen the stories, and I'm here to tell you they're true. A ripple of gasps echoed through the room, but Damien didn't waver. He gripped the sides of the podium, his gaze unwavering as he spoke. Yes, I made a bet. A cruel, thoughtless bet. I married Sophia on a dare because I was arrogant enough to think I could buy anything, including someone's dignity. He paused, his chest tightening as memories of Sophia's tear-streaked face flashed in his mind. But what I didn't expect, he continued, his voice softening, was that in the process, I'd meet someone who would change my life. Sophia isn't just a woman I married on a whim. She's the woman who showed me what it means to feel again, to care, to love. His voice cracked slightly, but he pressed on, letting the world see the man he had become. I hurt her. I betrayed her trust. But my feelings for her are real, and if she's watching this right now, I want her to know, I'm sorry. Not just for the bet, but for every moment I made her feel like she was anything less than extraordinary. The room fell silent as Damien stepped away from the podium, leaving his heart exposed for all to see. Across town, in a modest apartment, Sophia sat frozen in front of the television, Damien's words replaying in her mind. She had tried to bury her feelings, to convince herself that walking away was the right choice. But hearing him speak with such raw honesty shattered every wall she had built around her heart. She saw the pain in his eyes, the regret in his voice. But more than that, she saw the man she had fallen for, the man who had stayed up all night to care for her when she was sick, who had listened to her stories without judgment, who had made her feel seen in a way no one else ever had. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized the truth she had been too scared to admit. She still loved him. Without thinking, Sophia grabbed her coat and rushed out the door, her heart pounding with a mix of fear and hope. When Sophia arrived at the Blake estate, her hands trembled as she pushed open the grand doors. The house felt different now, less imposing, more empty. She found Damien in his study, staring out the window, lost in thought. "Damien," she whispered, her voice breaking the silence. He turned, his eyes widening in disbelief. For a moment neither of them moved, the weight of their shared pain hanging heavy in the air. "I saw your press conference," Sophia began, her voice trembling. "I heard everything you said." Damien took a cautious step forward, his heart racing. "Sophia, But she cut him off, closing the distance between them. "Let me finish," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I was scared, Damien. Scared of how much I loved you. Scared of being hurt. But walking away from you, that was the biggest mistake of my life." Damien's breath hitched, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I never wanted to hurt you. I didn't know what love was until you." Sophia reached up, cupping his face in her hands. "I don't care about the bet. I don't care about the past. I just care about you." With that, she pulled him into a kiss, their tears mingling as they held each other tightly, both knowing that this time there was no going back. Months later, life had taken on a new rhythm. Damien had stepped back from the corporate world, focusing instead on living a life filled with meaning rather than excess. He found joy in the simple things, like waking up next to Sophia, cooking breakfast together, and taking long walks through the city that had once felt so empty. Sophia, with Damien's unwavering support, opened a community center for homeless youth, dedicating her time to helping those who had once stood where she had. The center became a beacon of hope, a testament to resilience and second chances. Their love wasn't perfect, it was messy, complicated, and filled with moments of doubt. But it was real, and that's all that mattered. One evening, as they stood on the balcony of their modest apartment, watching the sun set over the city skyline, Damien wrapped his arms around Sophia, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You know," he murmured, his voice soft, "if someone had told me a year ago that I'd marry the love of my life because of a bet, I wouldn't have believed them." Sophia laughed, leaning into his embrace. "And if someone had told me I'd fall for a cocky millionaire, I'd have thought they were crazy." Damien chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Guess life has a funny way of surprising us." Sophia turned to face him, her eyes filled with love. "As long as we face those surprises together, I'm ready for anything." And with that, they sealed their promise with a kiss, knowing that their journey, though unexpected, was exactly where they were meant to be. Together. Forever. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who believes in the power of love. For more inspiring, heartfelt stories that will move your soul and remind you of life's most beautiful lessons, make sure to subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories and hit the notification bell so you never miss a tale that could brighten your day or even change your life. Thank you for watching, and remember, sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones we never see coming.